Barakatah Yahweh, Bahashem Yahushai, Bahashem, Racha Kudash. Welcome to another live lesson. The name of this one is The House of David and the House of Saul. And pretty much this lesson is inspired by something I was reading. Actually, I was listening to it yesterday in the book of Samuel. And then this morning, I was, looking for a topic to go into. And this came back into mind. So I went back and did a little bit of reading on the history. And pretty much, we're living now in the time of the battle between the house of David and the house of Saul. And, this is not a new revelation. This is something that's been spoken of before. And those that are for the house of David are following after King David. For those of you who don't know, or don't understand, King David, we believe, is King Masha, which we've showed pictures. We put up videos of him. And if you could receive it, beautiful. If you can't, then, there's not much we could do. And, pretty much there's been a struggle, since the truth was really put out there and pushed out there heavy, going back to Elder Abba Bivens, and up through the ranks of the different men that have come in through One West. There's been a struggle, like a power struggle. Everybody wants to take the crown. Everybody wants to, everybody wants to get rid of the top man so that they can be the next man in charge, and so on and so forth. And I was thinking about this too, that once the split happened back in, I believe that was 96 or 97, one of those 2 years, because I believe King Masha passed in 98, if I'm not mistaken, or it could have been 99. But the Cornelius Councils was either 96 or 97, from what my memory best serves me. And after that split, when the Cornelius Council came up, we got kicked out after the third council, as you brothers already know. And King Masha was still there, with Elder Barak. Back then his name was nothing Yalaga, which now he's known as Bishop Nate. You had Ben Banyamyan, or Elder Banyamyan. You had Rahab, Yaasha, and others. And Bishop Nathaniel was within them in that group. And eventually what they did was, here it is, they call themselves House of David, and they kicked the king out. And now HODC got a nerve to call themselves House of David Church, and they kicked King David out years ago. So I'm under the impression that all those men are from the house of Saul, except for Bishop Nathaniel. We believe Bishop Nathaniel is a man of the Lord from the house of David. And you might be like, well, he came against the king, he kicked the king out. Well, Joab, he got caught up. I believe it was Ahithophel, which was King Solomon's son. And King Solomon was supposed to be the next ruler. And they set up Ahithophel, if I'm not mistaken. Brothers can put it in the comment board, and correct me on it if I'm wrong on the name. And when he was made king, what happened? Joab went with him. So he got taken. And Joab is of the house of David, So that will happen. You will have situations like that, so we believe that out of all of those men that kicked King David out, the only one that has, any hope of being of the house of David and being a man of the Lord is Bishop Nathaniel, So this struggle has been going on, and it's like, it was always against King Masha, Lahab, or High Priest Lahab as he was called back then. High Priest Yeshaya, as they were called back then. Once the split happened, I know, High Priest Lahab had already been gone the couple of years before that, a year or two before that. But from what I remember, from what I heard, that High Priest Yeshaya called him I think he said a big head N from Detroit, a truck driver, something like that, big head truck driver from Detroit or something like that. And pretty much it was all a thing of coming against, King Masha, because there's always been that struggle, and they were jealous pretty much of his position. Hold on for 1 second. Yeah, Salaki about that, brothers. I had to take this call real quick. I wasn't sure if it was something important or not, so I had to take it. So Salaki for that. But pretty much, this is a struggle between, the house of David and the house of Saul. And it's always been like that. And see, this is the benefit of knowing the history of One West and the different things that were going on there. Because I believe there was even a time when, after the first split, that they were talking about trying to kill King Masha. You know, it was like a lot of underhanded, grimy shit that was going on back then. But nevertheless, you know, the Lord's plans are going to prevail. And, you know, as we're going to read, you know, the house of David was established because the house of Saul was rejected. So we're going to go to 2 Samuel, the 2nd chapter. So this is for you scoffers out there and you people that look for entertainment. This is going to be a boring lesson because it's going to go into the history. So you might want to go somewhere else where you can find some controversy, where you can find a form of entertainment. But anyway, let's get into it. It says David made king over Judah. And when we read this, you're going to find out why, you know, High Priest Yeshaya, as he was called back then, said that the house of David is only the tribe of Judah, which is not correct. All right. You know, you have to go through the history to understand what was going on. But nevertheless, 2 Samuel 2:1, and it came to pass after this that David inquired of the Lord, saying, shall I go up into any of the cities of Judah? And the Lord said unto him, go up. And David said, whither shall I go up? And he said, unto Hebron. So David went up thither, and his 2 wives also, Ahinoam the Jezreelitess, and Abigail, Nabal's wife, the Carmelite. And his men that were with him did David bring up, every man with his household, and they dwelt in the cities of Hebron. And pretty much also sparked this also was a comment that Elder Yashawamba had made on one of the videos he did about King David, you know, being crowned in Hebron, something. I forget exactly how he said it, and it prompted me to, you know, go into the history. So it says, verse 4, and the men of Judah came, and there they anointed king over the house of Judah. And they told David, saying that the men of Jabesh Gilead were they that buried Saul. And David sent messengers unto the men of Jabesh Gilead. So this is after the death of Saul, King Saul. And said unto them, blessed be ye of the Lord, that you showed this kindness unto your Lord, even unto Saul, and have buried him. Right, because they went all night, they fought to get the bodies of Saul and his sons to bury them. It says, and now the Lord show kindness and truth unto you, and I also will requite you this kindness, because you have done this thing. Therefore now let your hands be strengthened, and be ye valiant, for your master Saul is dead, and also the house of Judah have anointed me king over them. So at this point, there was a split, right? So King David was anointed king over Judah, right? Let's read on. It says, but Abner the son of Ner, captain of Saul's host, took Ishbosheth the son of Saul, and brought him over to Mahanaim, and made him king over Gilead. So what they were doing was they were still trying to establish the kingdom of Saul and his sons after him as a king, because remember, he was crowned king, you know, and he was from the tribe of Benjamin. So they're like, nah, we're the successors. We know King David has nothing to do with this. He was just one of my father's, you know, servants, or whatever the case was. But what they didn't understand was that the Lord rejected Saul. So even to this very day, you have individuals out there that are fighting against King Masha, that are still talking shit about King Masha, because they are of the house of Saul. You know, i.e., you know, General Yohana and the ISUPK. Those men are of the house of Saul, unless some of them leave there and you know, and turn around and accept King Masha as king. You know, they're of the house of Saul. Because here it is, you have all these splits from all these different schools. You have different groups out there, and we're the only group. Great Millstone is the only group that ever put up videos on our elders. You know, giving praise and laud to our elders. You know, letting you know who our elders before us were. The nation of Israel at this point would not have known who King Masha was, or who High Priest Ariel was, or who High Priest Yaiquab was, or Elder Abba Bivens. or any of them, had it not been for Great Millstone putting up videos, as a commemoration or as a tribute to these great men. And you still have men to this day that do not accept King Mashai as King David. Bishop Nathaniel, I have to say, he said that King Mashai can't be King David because he had a dream with him that he was eating pork or some crazy shit like that. But dreams come in a multitude of business, and then Satan can give you dreams too. So there's always been a fight to for lack of better words, to dethrone King Mashai as being King David. But this is spiritual. It's not something that's a physical, carnal thing. It's something that's spiritual because it goes way back. So the men that were with King David back then, they're going to return and be with King David now. But what's happening is the house of Saul is still trying to establish themselves as they did here. Once the Lord rejected King Saul and King David was crowned king, they're still trying to establish the kingdom of Saul. It says that over the Asherites and over Jezreel and over Ephraim and over Benjamin and over all Israel. So at this point, the kingdom of Saul, which was rejected, when they made Ishbosheth king, the other tribes were with them. All right. So this is why Yeshaya, high priest Yeshaya, as he was called back then, said that the house of David is only, the house of David is only the tribe of Judah, which is not true. It says Ishbosheth, Saul's son, was 40 years old when he began to reign over Israel and reigned 2 years, but the house of Judah followed David. Okay. And the time that David was king in Hebron over the house of Judah was 7 years and 6 months, because there was great wars and battles between the house of David and the house of Saul. So what happened was Abner, which was the captain of the host of, underneath King Saul, he was Benjamin. He eventually, after this war we're going to read about, the civil war, he eventually, made a league with King David and said, look, if you were so-and-so and such, I will make sure that all of Israel is turned over unto you. You see? And that all Israel will follow you. So when we go to 2 Samuel 5, right? And it says, is it this one? Yep. Second Kings 5:1. It says David king over all Israel. See? So back then, when his kingdom was first established, he was over Judah, but eventually he was over all Israel when you go into the history. Because there was a split. So it says, then came all the tribes of Israel to David unto Hebron, and spake, saying, behold, we are thy bone and thy flesh. Because what the Lord is reestablishing, what? The house or the tabernacle of David. And the tabernacle of David back then and now consists of all 12 tribes. But see, when one is obsessed with just, it's just about the tribe of Judah, because you see certain individuals, it's just about Judah. To hell with the other tribes. When you're obsessed like that, you can't think straight. You can't see straight. And it says, also in time past, when Saul was king over us, thou was he that led us out and brought us in Israel. And you have to read the history that happened before this with Abner. Because Abner was the one that was making the league with King David to all Israel to come to King David, because he was the rightful king in Israel. And there was a whole thing that went on because Abner, had killed, Asahel, which was Joab's brother. So Joab and Abishai, they wanted to kill Abner because they killed his brother. But he warned him not to follow after him. And he didn't listen. So what happened was, when the league was being made, Abner made the league with King David. Then Joab called him, aside, or they called him back. And he said, hey, come here, let me holler at you. And I think he said he grabbed him by the beard and killed him. And then King David was saddened by that. And he said, his blood be upon you and your house. We're guiltless of Abner's blood. And he said, died Abner as a fool, because Abner was a great mighty man. And to die like that, that was a dishonorable thing. But nevertheless, in that meeting that he and King David had, he established all of Israel to King David. That's what we're reading here also. And the Lord said to thee, thou shalt feed my people Israel, and thou shalt be captain over them. Who else was this said to? That you love me, feed my sheep and feed my lambs? This was said to Peter, the apostle Peter, because King David and Peter are the same in the reincarnation. You know, if you can accept it, beautiful. If not, then hey, you don't have to accept it. It says, so all the elders of Israel came to the king to Hebron, and King David made a league with them in Hebron before the Lord, and they anointed king over Israel, because they had first anointed him king over what? Over Judah. But then eventually over Israel, because he was a rightful king that the Heavenly Father set up that was going to rule over all of Israel, not just the tribe of Judah. David was 30 years old when he began to reign, and he reigned 40 years. In Hebron, he reigned over Judah 7 years and 6 months, and in Jerusalem, he reigned 30 years over all Israel and Judah. Why is it that individuals that just seek their, no, it's just about Judah, they're going to read that, but they won't read this, which explains the whole story. Just like you have those that say, like the Jews in Jerusalem, they weren't accepting any other tribes unless they fell up under their rule, because like 2 Kings says that there was none left but the tribe of Judah. But then the tribe of Judah eventually got taken out. You see? So there's been a struggle, a spiritual struggle. So we're going to go back now, and we're going to read about the civil war that took place between the house of Judah and the house of David and the house of Saul. So it says, and Abner, the son of Ner, and the servant of Ishbosheth, the son of Saul, went out from Mahanaim to Gibeon. And Joab, the son of Zeruiah, the servant of David, went out and met together by the pool of Gibeon. And they sat down, and the one on one side of the pool and the other on the other side of the pool. And Abner said to Joab, let the young men now arise and play before us. And Joab said, let them arise. Then there arose and went over by number 12 of Benjamin, which pertained to Ishbosheth the son of Saul, and 12 of the servants of David. And they caught every one his fellow by the head, and thrust his sword in his fellow's side. So they fell down together, wherefore the place was called Helkahazurim, which is in Gibeon. And there was a very sore battle that day, and Abner was beaten, and the men of Israel before the servants of David. And there, it says, and there were 3 sons of Zeruiah there, Joab and Abishai and Asahel. And Asahel was as light of foot as a wild roe, because he was swift. Let me see you get a Edomite out of that. It's a so-called Caucasian out of that. First of all, Asahel being light of foot, Esau ain't light on their feet. They got club feet. They can't run like that. Who's the fastest runners? Think about it. And Asahel pursued after Abner, and in going he turned not to the right hand or to the left from following Abner. Then Abner looked behind him and said, art thou Asahel? And he answered, I am. And Abner said to him, turn thee aside to the right hand or to thy left, and lay thee hold on one of the young men, and take thee his armor. But Asahel would not turn aside from following of him. And Abner said again to Asahel, turn thee aside from following me, wherefore should I smite thee to the ground? How then should I hold up my face to Joab thy brother? Because he really didn't want to kill him. But this dude was on his ass. Howbeit he refused to turn aside, wherefore Abner with the hinder end of the spear smote him under the 5th rib, that the spear came out behind him. And he fell down there and died in the same place. And it came to pass that as many as came to the place where Asahel fell down and died stood still. Joab also and Abishai pursued after Abner, and the sun went down when they were come to the hill of Ammah, that lieth before Giah, by the way of the wilderness of Gibeon. And the children of Benjamin gathered themselves together after Abner and became one troop and stood on the top of an hill. Then Abner called Joab and said, Shall the sword devour forever? Knowest thou not that it will be bitterness in the latter end? How long shall it be then ere thou bid the people return from following their brethren? And Joab said, As the Most High liveth, unless thou hadst spoken, surely then in the morning the people had gone up, every one from following his brother. So Joab blew a trumpet, and all the people stood still and pursued after Israel no more, neither fought they any more. And Abner and his men walked all that night through the plain and passed over Jordan and went through all Bithron, and they came to Mahanaim. And Joab returned from following Abner, and when he had gathered all the people together, there lacked of David's servants 19 men and Asahel, which is 20 men altogether. So they lost 20 men of the house of David. But the servants of David had smitten of Benjamin and Abner's men, so that 360 men died. That was 360. And they took up Asahel and buried him in the sepulchre of his father, which was in Bethlehem. And Joab and his men went all night, and they came to Hebron at break of day. All right. So now let's go to the next chapter. It says, Now there was long war between the house of Saul and the house of David. And this war is now spiritual war. It's a war on words. It's a war on, talking shit. Who is the established, group that the Lord is dealing with? Just like you had the house of David and you had the house of Saul. And you had Saul's descendants, which set themselves up as kings to claim that they were the ones that were set up in the power. Just like you have General Johanna, which is of the house of Saul, set up, saying that if the ISUPK is the only group out there that was I forget how they say it, pretty much that they're the only authority of the they call it the Israelite School of Universal Practical Knowledge, which was the Israeli School of Universal Practical Knowledge, when you go back to the original school at One West. So they changed that. All right. And they're not established, but it's a spiritual thing now. There's a back and forth going on with that. Same thing when High Priest Lahab, as he was called back then, when he was set up, he wanted to be the head. This is why a lot of underhanded shit was going on back then. I don't know all the specifics. I just heard things here and there, and I know it to be true because it's scriptural, even though, it's a different time frame or different time, but it goes back to the spiritual battles that were going on back then between King Saul and David before he became king. And then after King David was anointed king, there were still battles and struggles going on. This is why Shimei, the Benjamite, was cursing King David out. Because they felt that their descendants, or the Benjaminites should have been the ones that take over the throne after King Saul's death and his son's death. They felt that they should be the ones to continue on in the kingdom, but it wasn't so. It says, now there was long war between the house of Saul and the house of David, and it's up to this very day. This is happening. For those of you that have ears to hear and eyes to see, it's the same thing going on now. It says, but David waxed stronger and stronger, and the house of Saul waxed weaker and weaker. And you're seeing that because the Lord said, when the time comes, then shall be known who are my chosen. Because the chosen of the Lord are going to shine forth. Let's go to Malachi chapter 3. Malachi 3, and we'll start at 16. Then they that feared the Lord spake often one to another, and the Lord hearkened and heard it, and a book of remembrance was written before him for them that feared the Lord and that thought upon his name. Come on now. And they shall be mine, saith the Lord of hosts, in that day when I make up my jewels, and I will spare them as a man spareth his own son that serveth him. And that's what's happening right now. The makeup of the jewel, the crafting, the workmanship of these jewels are being fashioned, polished to be presented before the world. There's another scripture, I believe that's in 2nd Ezra 13, if a brother know where it's at, where it says, then shall the bride be shown, or something like that. If a brother knows, I mean, that's about as much as I can remember. Then shall the bride be shown. Let's see. Nope. Okay. Let's try the bride. 40 matches. Right, here we go. 2nd Ezra 7 and 26. Behold, the time shall come. Oh, this is a beautiful one too. There was one here. 2nd Ezra 13:36. And Zion shall come and shall be showed to all men, being prepared and builded, like as thou sawest the hill graven without hands. That's right. Now, here in 2nd Ezra 7:26, behold, behold, the time shall come that these tokens which I have told thee shall come to pass, and the bride shall appear, and she coming forth shall be seen, that now is withdrawn from the earth. Because remember, we were not reckoned among the nations. But now the reckoning is coming. But what's happening is that the house of David, the tabernacle of David, is what's being built right now. Not the tabernacle of Saul. I mean, find me a precept scripture in there where the Lord said he's going to build up the tabernacle of Saul. He's going to establish the tabernacle of Saul. You're not going to find it. But those same spirits that were back then, that were a part of King Saul's house, are back now, doing the same exact thing. So this is Amos chapter 9, verse 11. The restoration of Israel. And once King David took his place as king, that began the cementing of the king of Israel on the earth, and the establishment of his throne and on the earth, which is what the Most High promised him through his son. Let's see, the brother put Psalms 87 and 5, and of Zion it shall be said, this and that man was born in her, and the highest himself shall establish her. Right. So we're going through right now is the establishment. Before we read any more of this, let's see. Establish. Let's look up the word establish. Let's see if they give you the definite. Okay. Establish. Set up an organization system or set of rules on a firm or permanent basis. See? So before the Lord could permanently establish this, there had to be, the Lord had to speak about it through his prophets. And right now we at the point where it's being established. And in it being established, what's happening is there is a restoration going on of the building of the house of David, which we read here, Amos 9:11. In that day will I raise up the tabernacle of David that is fallen. Right, because we fell at one time hard. But now what the Lord is doing is he's stirring up those spirits back then, King David included, that were fallen, that fell asleep, and he's stirring their spirits back up and joining them back together according to their respective tribes, according to whatever position they held under King David. And those King David's men were faithful. Even Joab was faithful, but he got sidetracked at the end because he knew that the king was about to die. He was on his deathbed, and his son was going to. He didn't understand that King Solomon was going to be the next king. And when they went in and set up Ahithophel, he fell. He went with it because he thought that was the right thing. So it says, in that day will I raise up the tabernacle of David that is fallen and close up the breaches thereof. What are the breaches? Meaning all of the differences. those gaps, the differences, between the different tribes, to bring them back together as one. So the Most High is establishing the tabernacles of David. He's establishing the tabernacle of David, should I say. He's not establishing the tabernacle of Saul. You're not going to find a scripture anywhere in the Bible that's going to say that the Lord is setting up the tabernacle of Saul. Because remember, going back to the prophet Samuel, the Lord rejected, the house of Saul. It says thereof, and I will raise up his ruins. See, because we were ruined. We fell. We were destroyed. I just want to look up the word ruins. The word ruins is the word harayasah. Harayasah. Ruin. Something demolished. Yeah. So we were destroyed. We were destructured as a people. And now we're going through the process of being rebuilt. So it says that the ruins, right? And will build. The word build is a word banah. Means to build, rebuild. So now we're going through the rebuilding stage, because this is the third temple. You had the first temple that was destroyed by the Babylonians. You had the second temple, which was destroyed by the Greeks destroyed it, but it was reestablished. The same temple was reestablished during the time of Herod, and then eventually the Romans tore it down to the ground. And now we're going through the building of the third temple, which is spiritual, because we are a spiritual house that are being built, because the Lord said that we are the temple of the Lord. The Lord don't dwell in temples made with hands. We are the temple of the Lord, and the Spirit of the Lord dwells within us. So we're set up, as, the third temple in all the different tribes. And there's no coincidence that the southern kingdom were the first ones to get the word, to get the truth, to be established, to be set up. All right. So let's read this again in its entirety. All right. Oh yeah, I wanted to say this. There's a brother that comes to the Apostles Camp on Saturdays. We call him Big Dog. I don't know if the brother's watching right now. But there's no way to really get in contact with you, bro. So if you are watching, you can report to the Jersey camp, because it's a lot closer to where you're at. It's probably like around 25 minutes away from you. So let me know if you're on the comment board, and I can give you the info you need to go see the brothers. But yeah, you are to report to them, because they're a lot closer to where you're from. All right, out there in Jersey. All right, so let's read this again. In that day will I raise up the tabernacle of David that is fallen, and close up the breaches thereof. So the Lord is building up the tabernacle, pretty much rebuilding it, because we fell, and closing the breaches, meaning he's getting rid of all the differences, all that shit that kept us separate, because the Lord is building his house. He's the one that broke the brotherhood, and he's the one that's mending the brotherhood. And I will raise up his ruins, and I will build it as in the days of old. So if he's going to build it as in the days of old, the people that are going to be there are the same spirits that were back there with King David. And you still have the king, and you still have the house of Saul that's around. You still have the house of Saul that's still around. But the house of David, as we read back in Samuel, Second Samuel 3, it says, but David waxed stronger and stronger, and the house of Saul waxed weaker and weaker. So we're now going through the process of the Lord building up, polishing, establishing the house of David. Right? It says, then shall you return and discern between this is back in Malachi 3:18. Then shall you return and discern between the righteous and the wicked, between him that serveth the Most High and him that serveth him not. And it's going to be made known who the Lord is dealing with. There's going to be I forget who did the video, a line drawn a spiritual line drawn in sand. I'm not sure if that was Elder Mawatazak or another brother that did it, but it's true. The Lord is going to draw a spiritual line in the sand. He's going to show you this separation. There's going to be another instance as where Moses asked who was on the Lord's side and who was on the, I believe it was Abiram and them, Korah and them, and the Lord and Moses told the Levites to strap on a sword, and they had to go to work, man. Now I'm not sure if that was, I might be mixing two what you call it up, because there was a time when the children of Israel rose up to play. I think that was definitely a different time than Corey, Dathan, and Abiram. And I believe it was the time when Jake was wilding, worshiping the golden calf, and that's when Moses told the Levites, to put their sword on their side to get the work on them, Yep. Abner versus Joab. That's right. At the pool. Yep. All right. So let's see what else we got. Now we go to 2 Samuel 5:9. It says, so David dwelt in the fort and called it the city of David. And David built round about from Milo and inward. And David went on and grew great. And the Lord power of hosts was with him. So he grew great. So he started to grow greater and greater. Shalom to the elders and brothers and the few sisters that are sincere on the comment board. Shalom. Now what's funny is that when King Saul was established, then rejected, his kingdom, he died, his sons died, the kingdom was passed over to King David. The Lord brought all Israel under King David's rule, as we read earlier on in this chapter. Then eventually, in process of time, what happened? Right after King Solomon, not too long after that, maybe you say maybe about another, 50 years? Well, actually, a little less than that. In the future, the tribes were split up again. You see? Because the kingdom of Israel, or the kingdom of Judah, was split and severed from the kingdom of Israel. And now we're coming back to how the Lord is building everything back up. Matter of fact, here goes here it goes right here. The brother, the up and coming elder, Gabar Yahawada, put it up. This is Exodus 32:27. He said unto them, thus saith the Lord power of hosts, put every man his sword by his side, and go in and out from gate to gate throughout the camp, and slay every man his brother, and every man his companion, and every man his neighbor. Yeah, because they were being wicked, and they didn't want to stop worshiping that calf, and they were doing it secretly in the wilderness. That's why the Lord was so mad at them. We read about that in 2 Kings, the 17th chapter. They were doing that secretly. But now the house of David is waxing greater and greater. And the house of Saul is waxing weaker and weaker. All right. And like I said, not too long after this, after King Solomon was set up as being king, towards the end of his towards the end of his rulership, when he went off, the Lord eventually split the kingdom between his son Rehoboam and Jeroboam, the Ephraimite. And when that split came, it's been that way ever since. Let's go real quick to the book of Zechariah 11. It's been that way ever since, until this time now. So it says, this is Zechariah 11:14. Then I cut asunder mine other staff, even bands. And what is bands? Bands is something that binds something together, a binder. That I might break the brotherhood between Judah and Israel. Right. And that's why that happened, because the Lord severed the bond. And now he's reestablishing the bond with setting up the house of David, the tabernacles of David. And if the Heavenly Father is going to set up the tabernacles of David, don't you think David would be there? Don't you think David would be leading it? Well, according to y'all, King Marshall is dead. No, well, he is in the spirit world, but he still led the charge. And some of you individuals out there are so weak-minded that you don't think that the Most High can raise a man up from the grave. He can raise him up even before, the last trump, if he wants to. You don't understand the power of the Lord. That's what Yahushua cursed out them wicked Pharisees and them said. He told them, "You err not knowing the scriptures, nor the power of thereof." When the Lord told Abraham, to sacrifice his son, when you read in the scriptures, it tells you that Abraham knew that the Heavenly Father would be able to raise up Isaac from the grave. That's how great a faith Abraham had. You see? Because if by your reasoning, then when Herod killed James, the brother of John, then maybe he's not an apostle. Maybe he wasn't one of the 12 apostles because he got killed by Herod. And eventually all the apostles got killed. The same thing happened here in Connecticut. When the dude we call Hot Dog Head, which he's in the spirit world, he's good now. We call him Hot Dog Head. And High Priest Yaquab had passed. He was the first one to pass. And I remember it coming out of his mouth. He said, "Well, you might have to rethink that James thing." So what? Because we believe that High Priest Elder Yaquab is James, the brother of John, the apostles of Yahushai. And he said that. He said, "Oh, might have to rethink." He said, "We might have to rethink the James thing." I said, "What?" The scriptures, that shows you that guys don't understand. They don't know the scriptures. The scriptures say that if a man dies, his works follow him. And they're just basically at rest. They make it seem like they went somewhere and that's it. You'll never hear from them again. They're lost in oblivion somewhere. Revelation 14:18. Nope, not 18. It's 13. "And I heard a voice from heaven saying unto me, Write, blessed are the dead, which die in the Lord from henceforth. Yea, saith the Spirit, that they may rest from their labors, and their works do follow them." See, he would have been the same individual that once Yahushai, the disciples went through that, through a process that they thought that Yahushai, I guess we have to look for somebody else. We thought he was the man. And that's why Yahushua cursed him out. He said, "You fools and slow of heart." Because once people see somebody die, they think that that's the end all be all. That's it. No, the spirit goes back to the Heavenly Father who gave it, and the flesh goes to the earth, as is stated in the scriptures. Let me get this other precept in Corinthians. All right, Ecclesiastes 12:7. It says, "Then shall the dust return to the earth as it was, and the spirit shall return unto the Most High who gave it." And then that spirit keeps coming back down. That's why there's no new thing under the sun. 1 Corinthians 14:32. "And the spirits of the prophets are subject to the prophets." What does that mean? That means that every time a prophet comes back, they come back in their lot. They never lose their position, no matter what Shamyala try to say. Inside joke. Okay, you just lost your position. Okay, you just lost your position. Isaiah 34:17. "And he hath cast the lot for them." Who cast the lot? The Most High. What is a lot? A lot, like if you work in a particular place or you live in a particular place, you have parking lots where you park cars. And they're assigned to different units. They'll have a number pursuant to the unit number, and that is your parking space. That is reserved for you because you live there. It's the same thing with the prophets. They have a lot, and that lot, matter of fact, All right, so let's go back to the word lot is gawaral. Lot, pebbles used for systematically making decisions. And that's why Elder Pastor said that night of the council, so that we won't teach it, but if you want to, pretty much, if you want to settle this right now, we could cast a lot on it. And Nate lost his mind. That's wicked to her, you know. And he bounced. He went high up in the air. It says lot, pebbles used for systematically making decisions. Portion. So a lot is a portion that is allotted or given to who? To the prophets. And the spirits of the prophets are subject to the prophets. It says portion, lot, portion, thing assigned by casting lots, recompense, retribution. Let's see what it says in the common dictionary for the word lot. A large number or amount, a great deal, nope. A great deal, much, nope. A particular group, collection, or set of people or things. The article or set of articles for sale. Divide. Here you go. This is the one, verb. Divide items into lots for sale at an auction. Let's see. I can't think of. I was trying to think of a way to reword this just to get a better definition of it, but it's gonna come up with the same thing. Let's see what this says. Of course, now it's gonna. Let's see. It's not a large amount, not much. Everything. I mean, this is kind of sort of an amount or set of things, especially when there are several of these amounts. An area of land, in this case, an area of a person's lot. Right, they're planning to build a house on a vacant lot on 35th Street. Let's say they build the lot on 36th Street, a vacant lot on 36th Street. What's going to happen? They got to tear it down and move it to 35th Street because that was the allotted place for this building. Here we go. Draw lots. To make a decision by choosing from a set of objects such as pieces of paper or sticks that are all the same except for one. We drew lots to decide who would go. And that's pretty much what the lot is. All right. So going back, let's read this again and then I want to read this other precept. Isaiah 34:17, and he had cast the lot for them, meaning the allotted space for them, and his hand had divided it unto them by line. So let's go here real quick. Proverbs 18:18, the lot causes contention to cease, because once you cast a lot, it's over. So the spirit of the prophets is set up for the prophets. And yep, a lot is a portion. That's right. Yep. A lot is a portion. That's right. So the lot causes contention to cease and parteth between the mighty. Yeah. So the bottom line is, casting lots is not wicked, and the prophets were given a set portion. They were given their lot. And matter of fact, somebody just put this up. I saw somebody put this up. Daniel 12:13. It says, but go thou thy way to the end be, for thou shalt rest and stand in thy lot, meaning in your portion, at the end of the days, which means that he's going to come back in his position. The spirit of the prophets is subject to the prophets. So it says, and he, Isaiah 34:17, and he had cast the lot for them, and his hand had divided it unto them by line, because they all were given a certain portion. That's why it says, when you prophesy, prophesy according to the proportion of faith that's given to you. They shall possess it forever because they're never going to lose it. The spirit of the prophets is subject to the prophets. From generation to generation shall they dwell therein. So they'll never lose it. You're not going to be a grimy individual in the past life and then come back as a prophet. You know? Then the next life you come, you're going to be a fairy. And then the next life you come, you'll be a prophet again. And then the next life you come, you'll be a murderer, a scavenger, a low-life scumbag. You know, and you have 3 or 4 consecutive lives like that. Then all of a sudden you come back as a prophet. It doesn't work like that. You might as well just say, well, the toad, the next time he comes, he's going to come as a prince. The fuck out of here, man. So pretty much, you know, this has been the house of David and the house of Saul. You know, and you're seeing the house of David and the house of Saul being established. And, well, not established. You're seeing the house of David being established and the house of Saul coming against the established house of David. You know, so with that, you know, I pray that your brothers and your few sisters have been edified. To the next time I say, Shalom.